Members of the board, I want to welcome everyone here today, especially those that are watching online, to our Board of Directors agenda meeting for November the 28th, 2023, which is an opportunity to review the agenda for our formal board meeting that will be held on December 1st, December 5th, 2023. First is Mr. LaRon McAdoo here. Do I see it? He's not here yet. If not, I'm going to read this proclamation for Little Rock Poet Laureate Day. Whereas the literary arts encompass the core of our community's identity and vitality and express the soul of our people, and embracing our literary arts within the community is essential for celebrating our culture. And whereas poetic expression is an honored literary tradition that engages the community with feelings, thoughts, and perspective through artistic narratives, elements that embrace our shared joys, celebrations, pains, fears, and hopes. And whereas a robust literary community remains vital to understanding the stories of our past and present with visions for our future, capturing stories, our experiences, and our identities through poetry, enabling us to document this living history. And whereas a literary city empowers all its residents to embrace literacy, written language, and poetic expression in how we connect with one another, fostering a dynamic, thriving city that is by, about, and for the people. And whereas a poet laureate, sorry about that, is the symbol of how artistic and literary expression are at the heart of our community and shared experiences, an honored position that represents the collective voices of our writers, poets, and greater community. And whereas the City of Little Rock would like to offer its special recognition to LaRon McAdoo and his many contributions to the craft of creative writing, as well as his literary and creative influences to the arts and cultural community of the city. Now therefore I, Frank Scott Jr., the Mayor of the City of Little Rock, Arkansas, do hereby affirm the importance of selecting a Little Rock Poet Laureate for the benefit of the City of Little Rock. Encourage all of the residents of Little Rock to embrace this opportunity to celebrate the literary arts locally. I, Frank Scott Jr., Mayor of the City of Little Rock. Thank you so much. We'll now have, on December 5th, we'll have a brief presentation from the Downtown Master Plan members. Members of the board, there's one modification for today's agenda. You'll see, that day's agenda, which is M1. You'll see that. Any questions on items 1 through 5? No. Director Adcock.
Yes, on item 5, please.
Yes, Emily.
Okay, we did one of these studies a few years ago. Do you remember how long it has been?
It predates me, but I believe it was sometime in the 1990s.
In 1990?
In the 90s is, I believe. I'll have to check the last time we did
If
one.
you would check that, because I don't think it was that long ago. I was thinking it was right before the pandemic.
Director Adcock, I would agree with Emily. It was probably 20 years ago. Mr. Moore shared that with me.
I would like to know when it was done. Is this a local company?
They are not. There was a bid process and there were 7 respondents and this one was the top.
And where is this company from?
I will find out for you.
Okay. The other 7 companies, was they all from out of state also?
The majority of them were, if not all of them. I'll double check that as well.
And I would like to know if this is the same company that did it last time.
Okay.
This amount, why here at the end of the year are we doing something that is so costly?
Director Adcock, if you recall, almost a year ago now, well, at the beginning of the top of the year, we brought this before the city board. We had the money within a budget amendment. There were some concerns at the time of that initial bid in regards to the wording of that contract. Director Campuris actually highlighted that. We got that corrected and rebid the process, and this is as a result of Director Campuris' questioning, and we got that situated.
Okay.
I was giving you a shout out. It was positive. You still can't hear it?
Would you turn up the sound, please? I didn't hear the mayor's remarks.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Barely, go ahead.
I was sharing and highlighting that we brought this before the city board earlier this year.
Correct.
You saw some areas that need to be corrected. We got those corrected, rebid the process, and here we are today.
Correct.
And I was giving you a shout out and a positive affirmation.
Oh, thank you.
I would like
Really,
to
did I
see
do something right?
our application.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
I would like to see it as well.
Okay.
All right, Director Hines?
Yes, Mayor, I'm going to ask this item be held separate. Tom, is there any legal justification or need for us to do this? Are we facing any lawsuits or anything where somebody has said that we are not being fair in our bidding process in the city?
No, there's not. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled in a case called Croson versus City of Richmond that certain factors can be taken into consideration in the awarding of contracts, and out of that grew a cottage industry for disparity studies to show that not only were members of a particular group not getting to get contracts, but in fact there was some form of discrimination against them. You had to look at that in terms of the relevant labor market, which, as we know from the questions that Director Adcock just asked, if you're looking for people to do disparity studies, your labor market's going to be pretty wide because there are not that many groups that do them. If you're looking at somebody that can repave a street, then your area and your relevant markets could be relatively narrow. So one thing the disparity study does is help look at the types of contracts and purchases that are made by a government and determine whether or not within certain areas there is some sort of disparity that is based upon an impermissible factor, whether that factor is race or gender or so on, that would allow some determination to try to give contracts in that area. And that has been the law without any doubt until last July. And then in July or June, right at the end of the term, the U.S. Supreme Court handed down its two decisions dealing with the consideration of such factors for admission to universities. One of the schools is Harvard. And now we have got one case which has challenged Section 8 contracting by the Small Business Administration, because that's been held to be in violation of the 14th Amendment. That's working its way up through the courts and we won't get an answer. So the question is if we find that there are eligible firms there that are not getting a chance to participate in city contracts, and that the only seeming reason we can give for that, for example, is race or is gender, then we can take some affirmative steps to make sure that we get a more equal contractual distribution. But we're not being sued right now.
All right. And then did the city of Memphis not get sued over their minority contracting formula that they came up with after they did a disparity study?
They did. They paid approximately $1 million in fees and costs because of the way that was done. After Director Campuris raised questions about this one, we shared the information from my office as to what was going on in Memphis and what the problems were. And it's my understanding that that was part of how the RFQ was written the second time to make sure we didn't get into that trick bag.
And so I guess since this was, I see by the write-up that was finally posted, it wasn't there this morning, that this was done by RFQ, correct?
Yes.
So basically, this is the contract rate negotiated after the RFQ was awarded to this company? Don't we normally go through an RFQ process where we select, then we negotiate the rate? I'm kind of curious as to how we already have a rate.
The way the process works is the RFQ determines only qualifications. They are
Correct.
ranked. And then the committee picks them, one, from the rankings, and is to negotiate a contract with them. If they do, then we come forward with the ordinance or resolution to allow the hiring. If they don't, then they're to proceed to the second and the third and so forth. And I think this was the top-rated firm by the committee.
Okay, thank you. I just,
But it's not like we hired them knowing we were going to pay this amount. It's, we said you've won the contract in terms of qualifications, and then a negotiated contract was set up, and then the legislation comes forward.
all right. I just give great pause to spending this kind of amount of money when we're sitting in here talking about not the ability to not pay our code enforcement officers, the ability to not do inspections. And this, to me, seems like spending money, because I can tell you, you give somebody $430 with a 10% contingency, which pushes this up to $480,000. They're going to find whatever you tell them to find. And if we're not being sued and there's not been any complaints that our bid process is unfair, I just don't see the need for this.
If I can answer that, we have had complaints that the bid process is unfair.
Yes.
And the complaint was based upon the fact that you look at the population breakdown within the city of Little Rock, and you look at the contractual award breakdown, and the percentages are far apart. The problem with that is that it's sort of interesting but irrelevant. The question is, were there qualified groups to do that? I don't think these disparity studies show what you want. When the last disparity study was done, its final conclusion was there was no disparity in the area. And after what happened in Memphis and the literature that's attacking the way these are done, I think people are being quite careful before they make such a determination.
Thank you, Tom. I want to share my appreciation for you sharing that with Director Hines and members of the board. This is a proactive approach to ensure that our city is being a leading city in relation to diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know in some areas that word may not be a good thing, but we stand on that because that's the right side of right. But it's also being proactive because we have seen the reason for this. And as our city attorney just shared, the good thing about it is if it shows that it's not, which it has before, some believe that it is now, this is proactive from that standpoint to be protective of the work that we are doing and advance that, no matter what it comes back to say. As we've seen before 20 years ago, it showed a different result. And we don't know what the result will be without this. Secondly, to members of the board, this has no bearing on the budget that you're voting on, because this was passed by you all, allocated by each of you all close to almost a year ago within this particular budget. And so that's already been set in standard, so that has nothing to do with anything related to this particular budget. And as we'll talk through the budget that we're going before, we have included raises for our code enforcement, things of that nature. So just want to make sure we're comparing apples to apples and not apples to oranges. Director Richardson, Director Hines, your hand's still up?
Well, I just have a comment based on what you just said. As we are looking at our current budget, And you tend to beat us over the head anytime something's been woven into the budget that we may not have realized was there as we approve a budget of several $100 million. As with any, I've had no comment. I'm trying to find out where all the Easter eggs in our budget are hidden. As we get to the end of this year, I had no idea that we approved in our budget last year $430,000 for a disparity study. I don't recall that it was ever disclosed to us when we approved last year's budget.
It was for $500,000, and Director Computers, we literally took it off the agenda. It was for an actual vote for someone else.
Okay.
And that's the reason why I want to credit the city attorney again, because of the issues with Memphis, because Memphis accurately did a disparity study. Cities like Atlanta, Dallas, other leading cities that we all look at have done this. To the credit of the city attorney, Memphis did it the right way. However, on a particular project, it was not done the right way, which triggered Director Computers to make certain that if we're going to move forward, we need to do it the right way. So I want to credit Director Computers again for that. Again, this was voted on by the city board early this year. We took it off the table, and at that point in time was for $500,000, which this is cheaper. And so it's already included in the budget, and from that standpoint. Director Richardson.
Yes,
Director Hines, is your hand still up?
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, just,
Correct.
Mayor, just to follow up on what you said, the issuance of this RFQ emanated from this table around here as a goal of ours, looking at, one, some complaints, two, looking at how do we adjust for the changing demographics of our city. And it was something that came from this board. It wasn't anything that was unilaterally decided upon by you or Bruce or anyone else. This was something that we looked at as a goal. And I remember distinctly that night we talked about that. Director Wyrick asked, does this include women as well? I remember that night we talked about it. This was a goal of ours. This came from us. And I think Director Computers, you're right, kind of told us, rein us back in a little bit. We slowed it back in, and Tom made all the necessary adjustments. So this is something that emanated from us in our conversation. Tom, I think we had an email exchange, and you can tell me over the last week or so about when the last one was conducted. I think I asked you for that date.
I think it was 1995.
I remember that. You responded to that email and gave us a year and a date. And that whole goal, Director Hines, was emanated from up here. It's been on our plate, and I think that Dean helped us rein it back in. I think Tom took in consideration some other things that happened in Memphis and other municipalities to make sure we're going about the right way. So this is nothing that's new. It's been something that we've talked about as a goal. To address some of the deficiencies that we see with respect to the issuance of contracts with minority-owned companies. And I think that's a credit to our objective thinking and objective looking at how we go about moving our city forward on an equal basis for all those who want to help us move our city forward. So this is nothing new. This has been here. We've talked about this, and it emanated from right up here. It came from us. It was something that we wanted to see, as you said, Mayor, a minute ago, proactively look at this and address this and do it in a meaningful, thoughtful way that was going to be beneficial, that was going to be fair, that was going to be transparent, that was going to be everything that we wanted it to be for our city. And of course, Tom, legal with respect to us moving forward with this. So this is nothing new. We've talked about this, and the only thing that's new is tonight we're talking about it for an agenda item for next week. But this is something we've talked about before.
Thank you,
If I
Director
could
Richardson.
add one comment. Disparity studies have a bad name because they arose out of a case where a city set aside so many contracts amounts will go to a particular group based upon their disparity. And the law's kind of filtered around that a lot. So the information is going to give you some excellent thoughts or policies. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt the board would like to help small businesses be productive businesses so that we have greater competition. So, for example, if you're to resurface 5 miles of road, there are only so many companies that can do 5 miles of road. But if you break it down, you can get a lot of road done by a lot of different companies who are then having the experience so that they can compete with the larger companies, can get the bonds, can get the assurance, and can get the prices, and that helps the economy as a whole. So this isn't you get the study, now you've got to do this. It's you get the study, is there something that needs to be done, and if so, what options are available?
Thank you. Director Miller, and we'll.
My hand was still up, Mayor. I wasn't
Hines.
finished.
Director Richardson.
Director Hines, that was, I think, Tom, you just said what I was going to, the last part I was going to say was, based on this study, ideally, there would be some policies that would also emanate from this board that would help us address any deficiencies we may see, or if we don't see any deficiencies, help us address how we move our city forward collectively in a more equitable fashion. So I think that the study in of itself is not going to be the panacea. It's not going to be the end all and be all. It's going to be the gateway or segue for policy discussions on issues that are relative to contracts issued through the city of Little Rock, from the city of Little Rock, because there's a general perception that we have some sacred cows in our city, that we never say no to them when they come to us for contracts. And conversely, there's a general sense and a feeling that there's some sacrificial lambs that no matter what they come for, they're going to be guaranteed. I know based on previous comments and or conversations about city business. So I think that your point about the study itself is not going to be the panacea. It's going to be the groundwork, framework for policy discussions for us around here to address what comes out of the study. That's it for me, Mayor.
Director Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to ask the Disparity Study Special Project Fund. It has $500,000 in it?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that means if we only spend just $430,000, we have $70,000 that is still in this fund.
Yes, sir.
And so we can probably visit maybe later about what other funds we have that may have money in them that we hadn't spent yet. Maybe we can have a discussion about that. I don't know, Mayor. I think
what I would share with you is kind of goes back to the conversation about the whole goal of any special project. If there's fund left, for instance, that particular one, what that would do is it'll be reconciled. One, if we needed to use it, it could only be spent on that, and if it had to be spent somewhere else, we would have to come back to you all. That's number one. Number two, generally what'll happen is we could also do it for any kind of cash flow, but it reconciles at the end, so it's not necessarily, how do I put it? That, let's just say it's 70,000. We won't know it's truly going to be, to even Director Hines' credit, the 10% contingency, let's say something happened or whatever, is now at 480. We don't know until after the work is done. Then after the work is done, then we figure out what's left to do then.
Okay, so just for example's sake, if there's funds left over, where do those funds go?
In that, so you have the assigned balance as we go back to, when we walk through that fund balance that I know the finance team walked with you, that's where it's there. Nothing's spent without you all.
It would go on the fund balance account?
Yeah, assigned.
Assigned to?
Yeah, the fund balance has assigned money, unassigned money, things of that nature. And the unassigned money is generally for cash flow.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna make sure we're clear that there's no money just laying around. But Director Richland, your hand back up?
No, Mayor.
All right, well, that's fruitful discussion. Also, want to credit Director Warwick too. Director Richland reminded me that that was included too as minority and women. It's not just minorities. So, all right. Any questions on items 6 and 7? Any questions on items 8 through 10?
I do.
Director Wyrick?
I hadn't raised my hand yet, but,
I saw you move motion, that's the reason.
okay, thank you, I'm a little slow. Mine was on 11.
All right, well, Director Adcock, what's yours on?
9.
All right. Director Collins, if you'll come up.
Yes, ma'am.
Jay, did you want 8?
Mine's 11.
Okay. Jamie, on number 9, I would like to have a presentation on that.
Yes,
And I
ma'am.
also would like to know why your group said denial on it.
Yes, ma'am. If we could bring up the zoning map. What the applicant was proposing to do is, they're in an R2 zone, residential zone. They wanted to put in really a commercial, educational deal for children. And it's a mixed use for the children, pottery studio, music studio, urban garden site. And they had applied for some funding to obtain that. And in that area, it's down at the very end of Wilson Road. If y'all, I know several board members drove that area before. That area for decades has kind of lost residential. Then it kind of had a resurgence of duplexes, and you kind of see the R4 zoning that's just to the left of it right there to the west. And so we went through that area to kind of look at that redevelopment and do we want to continue doing these duplex developments at that time. And it was right at about, I think, 15% of the market in that area, but we was also seeing some single family. So at the time, prior to this application, we was looking at that we felt like we needed to try to stick with single family residential development area. We've seen enough duplexes. And so when this come to us, the main concern that we had is the music studio and where it was located adjacent to other properties. How was that going to be accounted for? We never got really a good answer for that. And at the meeting, there was also one individual that's registered that did speak against this application. But in that discussion and back and forth with the Planning Commission, it was clarified. Mr. Allen did clarify that, and I'm going to pull up an email that he sent to us that kind of clarified the operations. We raised concern on how late. We do understand if it's going to be for the children, you're not going to have it. You need to have it a little bit after the school lets out in that time. But he said that for every day of the week, it was from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And on the weekend with operation hours 9 to 7. And then the main deal was the sound. And he put a condition on the application. They did. It was not something that the Planning Commission did, and confirmed that he would make wherever they would place that in the building soundproof. So that is a condition. He also had a condition of coming up with a parking plan. We need to know how they're going to pick up the young child or the children from the location and take them, and how many he's going to have. And he provided us with the parking plan. Right now, I would say that it's a starting point for a parking plan. And if approved at the board, we would seek, a more detailed parking plan as for what they committed to. So our recommendation only for denial was just based on the noise. We needed to know how that was going to get took care of in their operation. And that was affirmed what he was going to do at the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission voted for it to send the application to the board.
Okay, thank you. I went out there and I see how close it is to all the houses, and I agree with your recommendation.
So I think it's took care of in his condition that they put in the letter that they sent to us, and it's in the file. And we will ensure that that is the soundproof operation. That'll be a building permit issue, and so would the site plan or the parking compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Director Collins, since the applicant has addressed what you just shared as your concern in regards to the noise and has put that in writing so to hold accountable if it was to not happen, does that change the staff's recommendation?
Well, for us right now, at this point, I would say yes, but the policy has been whenever it comes from the Planning Commission and we recommend denial and it's approved at the Planning Commission, it is put on separate for that. So that would be something that the board would, and I would leave that default to the city attorney, executive administration.
No, it's just a question.
Yeah.
'Cause I know
I
you
mean, for
just.
us, they addressed the point of concerns that we would need, and we would not recommend denial if they'd addressed that before the Planning Commission.
Gotcha. Director Richardson?
Yes, Jamie, did I hear you correctly? You said only one person was there?
One registered objector spoke.
Only one registered objector. Who was opposed to this? So out of the many people who live in the area, you only had one person that objected to this?
That was there speaking. I can go pull all of the communication that we received and forward it. It's available. It was available at the Planning Commission, but only one come out and actually spoke against it at the Planning Commission.
Okay, thank you.
Director Lewis?
Thanks. I just wanted to put on record, thank you, Jamie, for answering my concerns. And just to piggyback off of you all now hearing from the applicant, which he addressed the concerns, I do support, therefore, if no other neighbors are against it. So I feel like if they were, they would have addressed it. I haven't received any concerns or questions from any in that area, so I just wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Members of the board, any question on item number 11? Director Lewis, your hand still up? Director Hines? Oh, Director Wire. I keep forgetting that it changed. That's your ward now, right?
Yes,
I apologize.
yes, it is.
It used to be 6 and 5, between 6 and 5.
Used to be 6, and now it's 7. Mr. Collins, I think I know what's going on with ordinance number 11. We've got a lot of people in that area that are sensitive to new development and streets and abandoning streets and traffic lights and all of those. So if you would explain what item 11 is doing.
Yes, ma'am. When the residential development that is just to the south of this went in, part of that was some conditions that was placed based on traffic. And so part of that was the Cooper Orbit tie. Prior to the tie come out and was right at Kirby Road. And that was a real complaint with the citizens in the area about how they access. We've done some minor improvements at that location to add some right turn lane dedicated, some other stuff helped that movement. But really the future plan was always to make the tie and into Panther Branch, which is the tie now is made on there. And then the other concern was when that tie is made and that development went in, would there be a signal at the intersection? And that is part of a public project that is going to go in place in this 3-year cycle. And so what this is that part of that planned development or that approval that went in and come to the Planning Commission and the board that had the abandonment. So the abandonment could not happen until the tie was made and operational, and then they would come back through the abandonment process to get that section of Cooper Orbit that would be between Panther Branch east back over to the tie to Canis. That would be abandoned and go to the developer because they had plans. There's a drainage easement that needs to go through there, so it's not going to be fully abandoned, just the roadway and the access. So some of that will be retained as drainage. And so this is just a continuation and a finishing up of what the developer and the city committed to in the approval of those developments and the realignment of Cooper Orbit. Panther Branch does not have or did not have and still doesn't have any addresses on it. And so the that will be Cooper Orbit tie, tying to Canis at that location. Essentially, Panther Branch name will go away.
Okay. And in fact, has there not already been a subdivision with a preliminary plat that encompasses the 60-foot of right-of-way abandonment
Yes, it does.
subdivision? So it's new lots, it's not new, well, it will be new, but I mean, it shouldn't be new to the community. They should already have seen the preliminary plat that shows this abandonment and those lots on it.
Yes, that is all part of that development, and that was done, as far as the traffic and the realignment, so it helps with the traffic, and the signal helps with all that, and then that abandonment and the improvements they're putting in, and if y'all drive out there and look at it, you'll see a drainage ditch that's put in there now will also help with all that drainage in that scenario. Of course, now they won't be crossing over that anymore. They'll be going back out to Canis where Panther Branch tied. But that was all agreed upon improvements through that development.
But now the Panther Branch tie that you're talking about should be called Cooper Orbit.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no addresses on there to have to go through and rename anything. It is just going to become Cooper Orbit.
Okay. And have we, I know we've got the new road opened up to go in there. Is it labeled Cooper Orbit?
I'll have to drive by and check, but I'll drive by and check and look. I thought that we had talked about them moving that sign over when they removed the sign on Cooper Orbit. I can't remember, but I will check.
Do you have, this is kind of off topic, but it's important to the folks out there. Do you have a date for the signal to go in?
Mr. Honeywell is right here, and he also, as he walked up, said that the name is there.
The name is there?
The name is there.
So handy.
Man, the street name sign is there saying Cooper Orbit at Canis. I don't know off the top of my head the exact time frame we're on with the signalization of that intersection, but I can get you those dates of what we have planned out with our design engineer. They are working on that design now. Yes, ma'am, they have.
Started the engineering. It's kind of a complicated arrangement to come up with. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want the people, and this says Ward 6, but it's really Ward 7. I just wanted the folks out there to have some comfort in what we're doing here, and it's not anything new that they haven't seen.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. To Mr. Laron McAdoo, we shared the proclamation earlier, did highlight you as the Little Rock Poet Laureate, and just want to make sure we recognize you again. If you just stand up. All right, give him a round of applause. Thank you so much. If you can stick to a brief 15 seconds, we'll give you 15 seconds before we carry on, because I hate for you to be here and you still didn't get a chance to speak. Just 15 seconds though, since I went back out of order.
Ladies and gentlemen, I represent for you to build best belief is the essential tool. My challenge is I cling to the dream of East End, the Highway 10, and everything in between. All communities, no matter house, lot, or street, Kamek Village, University Park, or Otter Creek. There are highlights from High Heights to Pinnacle Mountain, or Clinton Library with the Infinity Fountain. Central High went worldwide. We can't fear that past, but we can make education right here world class. A rich heritage. I can't say it no simpler. We must mark history like Mosaic Templars. Small town community was the picture once, but our vision is open like a fest on riverfront. Bold as Razorback red, let nothing hold us back. We stand strong from King Street to the cul-de-sacs. Thank you.
You say he represents what ward? All right. We'll now go to the budget discussion. Any questions? I do want to make one announcement as I shared, or before I go to the announcement, Director Hines.
No, it's for the budget discussion, so go ahead.
Wanted to make one announcement as I shared. I know there's been this conversation about the cost of living increase of sorts or a raise for the city directors. We will propose it to go from $18,000 to $25,000, and wanted to make share that with each of you, as I know many of you have been in discussion with me about that. You're aware of this proposal for that, and just want to share that. Director Hines.
Yes, Mayor, and again, I'll put it on the record, I'm not going to vote for myself a pay raise. I think the voters of Little Rock should be able to determine that for this board, and my position hadn't changed. With that being said, there's a structural issue within our budget, Mayor. It was brought up. It's been on the books for a long time that we've got several enterprise funds, whether it's the zoo, the golf courses, that have pro shops and gift shops, and also concession areas, that because of the way we force them to budget, that any funds collected do not stay within those departments' budgets for them to continue to buy inventory. So it seems to me that we have enterprise funds only in name only. Those funds, I'd like to see if we can come up with a way to change that structurally so that the pro shops at the golf courses, at least with their cost of goods, can maintain those cost of goods so they can I think it's just crazy that we have requests to increase a budget to buy product that's going to be sold only to have the profits turned back into the general fund, and not even the profits, but the cost of goods. They're not even able to retain their cost of goods to buy more product. So when we get to the end of a budget year, they've got shelves that are bare, product not to sell. And I can tell you as a former retailer, if you don't have product on the shelves, you can't sell it. And I think we need to, within this budget, we need to change that practice. If we decide we don't want to let them keep the profits, we should at least let them retain the cost of goods sold so that they can continue to buy food, beverage, merchandise to sell in the pro shops and our concessions within the city's enterprise units.
Thank you, Director Hines. As you stated, this has been a long-standing practice within the city of Little Rock, with the understanding that we still are in search of a new CFO, and that to change that process midstream, I don't think that's possible today, but we will make the commitment publicly to figure out how to get that changed. There are a lot of things that go in. I totally understand the retail standpoint where you're coming from, so there's no argument there. But I think because it's been long-standing how we've done this process, and I'm the first one to say, just because we've always done it, doesn't mean we have to continue to do it that way, so be very clear. But with the current search of a CFO and the intricacies of our budget, we'll make the commitment to figure out a process going forward. So I want to make sure I share that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Campiris?
On the issue of the pay raises, will that be a separate vote or be in the budget?
It'll be a public vote within the budget ordinance, and we've talked with the city attorney.
Well, I'm like Lance. I'm not going to vote for it, which means I'll be voting against the budget. So is there any way to segregate the two votes and still be part of the budget?
The city attorney is working through that, through another process called a companion deal, where you'll have a separate vote. It'll be two votes of the same thing, but it'll just still be one ordinance, but you'll be reflected.
Fine. I just want, I want to vote for the ordinance for the budget, but I don't want to vote for the pay raise. And
he's going to figure that out.
Okay.
There's one vote, but you are able to still reflect your no vote on the pay raise. All right, Director Miller.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to weigh in on this budget discussion too, as it relates to pay raises for the board. And as you know, I wanted more money than the $25,000, but that's fine. I'd compromise at that. And I think we have to take a real hard look at what 25 or what 18,000 where we are right now, that some of my colleagues say they won't vote for an increase. That really limits the number of people that could have an interest in serving on this board. And it really sort of limits it in such a way that people that are retired, people that have, wealth, those are the people that can come out and say, I want to run for the city board, and it's only $18,000. I think $18,000 is a deterrent to being inclusive for people who have an interest in serving this community. When you look at this board, 6 out of 10 members, I'm counting myself, are over the age of 70 years old. We need to expand this interest in serving in community service and serving on this board. And I think one way to do that is to increase the pay, because $18,000 is just not going to get it for people who are in their probably in their youth and don't have the wealth and who aren't retired. So I'm going to be strongly for this since people are stating their position at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lewis?
Yes, I agree with Director Miller, and I just wanted to ask, since there are some who do not want the raise, how can we separate? And the only reason, when I say separate, if certain board members don't want it, then can it be put in some type of ordinance where they don't receive it? But the reason why I'm putting this out here is because when this first came up and hit the media, I had constituents that was asking, are you all crazy? Like, who does that? The amount of work, and as long as you all have been set at this salary, and I'm saying you all as overall, because I am new in the position. But when it was brought to me, and I've had various conversations because they were just in disbelief. So that's why I'm saying I do support it. If we're saying we're going to be up with the times and trying to make sure that everyone is compensated fairly, why exclude the board members? But two, if board members don't want it, then how can we save that and put it towards something else?
I'm going to answer it. What has happened is, at the end of the day, just like anything, when majority of the board votes, that's the law. So a director could be against it, and they can still receive it because majority of the board voted for yes. That's number one. Number two, I do know there have been times throughout the years, just because of historical knowledge that's been shared to me, there may have been a board member or two that may choose to donate their salary to a nonprofit. So that it would have to still be for that particular person based on law. All right, Director Warwick.
Thank you, Mayor. When I started serving on the board a number of years ago, the last thing on my mind was how much am I going to make? Mine was all about community service and making Southwest Little Rock, Ward 7, a better place to live and work and raise our family. I'm glad that you're trying to figure out a way to segregate the budget vote from this vote, because I don't want to have to vote against the budget. I did that one year. And it didn't come out so well. So I don't want to have to vote against the budget, but I do want to vote no on a pay increase, because it's not about the money for me. It's about public service and helping constituents. So that's where I am on it.
Well, if that's the case, do it for free. How come we can't just take salary?
All right, we're going to get back. We're going to get back. Director Hines.
Thank you, Mayor. I think what gets glossed over here is that Director Miller, you're correct. Most people younger in their lives working in the private sector don't have the time, don't have the means, can't make the sacrifice because they're trying to feed their family. I was fortunate enough to be in a position where the owners of the company I work for said it was okay, but most importantly, my wife said it was okay, because the majority of my service to this city comes out of my family time. And I knew full well when I took the job what the pay was. And it wasn't about the pay. It was about being involved as a business person in our government and making that sacrifice. And to sit up here, and you've all run for election. I'm not saying we don't deserve it and shouldn't get it. What I'm saying is the voters of Little Rock should be deciding that, not us. It's a simple principle thing, and y'all can all go back to your constituents. And my deal is I don't know why we're so far, if we want a pay raise, why don't we put it on the ballot and put on the March ballot and let our voters decide instead of voting it and let them decide and live with those consequences. It seems to end around and to weave it into our budget so that we have to do it and either take the whole or none at all, I think is disingenuous to do it that way. If we'd had enough votes to do it, which obviously we didn't, we should be able to live with that. This is an end around to placate the minority on the board as far as not having the majority of vote to give themselves a pay raise. I never said I wouldn't. I'd support. Let's put it on the ballot in March. We've already got an election called. Put it on the ballot. Put it on the ballot for, whatever we come up with and see if the voters will approve it. At least the legislature came up with a system that gives voters a say as to how that's done. And that's where I'll rest. It's just an issue of, we all know what we signed up for, and to sit up here and wring our hands because we can't talk a majority of our board into giving ourselves a pay raise, that's on us. That's not on trying to weave it in, I guess, sleight of hand on putting it in the budget, but then saying, well, you can vote against it, but we're still going to, we should be voting on it straight up. Let's put it on the ballot. I've never objected to doing that. I just don't think we should be giving ourselves a pay raise. We have an opportunity. It doesn't cost us anything in March to put it on the ballot and ask the voters to decide if we should have a pay raise. And if the majority of our voters think we're not getting paid enough, then a majority of the voters will vote to give us a pay raise, and I can live with that.
Thank you, Director Hines, Director Lewis, then Director Miller.
I agree with Director Hines, and I think it should be based off ward because each ward knows their representative and how they are working for them. So if Ward 1 wants to award Director Miller, Ward 6 wants to award me, then I say that should be the fair way because again, if we have some who don't want it at all, then you can go around and campaign yourself and just say, don't vote no. Vote no on giving me the salary.
But I'm going to be very clear, everyone. Let me cut in. Try to get a little control here. A couple things. It's not free to put anything on a ballot. It costs about $150,000. That's number one, to put anything on a ballot.
Mayor, that's for a special election. We're having a March primary. I don't think it costs us anything.
You are correct. Well, special, I think that's ruling a little out on that because it's March versus November, but no need to go back and forth there. But it does have a cost to it to some extent. Secondly, the legislature has an independent commission and they are not elected. That's the process. So it's not on the ballot for the legislature. Just want to make sure everyone knows apples to apples, not apples to oranges. The legislature doesn't put theirs on the ballot. They vote for it themselves, just like what we just discussed. Director Miller.
Did you call on me?
Your hand's up.
Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't hear my name. And I appreciate what Director Hines has said. And he said several things. That his employer was fine with him running, that he had the means, that he had the wealth, that he had that. So many people in this community don't have that. And I'm not saying, I didn't run for city board because of the salary. That's not why I ran at all. $18,000 is not going to excite me to run. I don't know how many people, there are a few people on this board that go to more meetings than me, and they're probably retired. But I go to a lot of meetings. I love this city, and I'm not out here for the money. But I want this city to be more inclusive. There are other people out here that have an interest probably in serving on this board, and money is a factor with them. Money may not be a factor for everybody, but it's a factor for them. And when you look at this board, and I'm going to say it again, 6 out of 10 people on this board are over the age of 70. That's including myself. You know, we've made our funds. We have wealth. We have the ability to do that. So many people in this community don't have the ability to do that. And just to bump this salary up some more, if you don't like what your board members have voted for, there's a process to get rid of them. When they run again, don't vote for them if you feel that way. But I'm telling you that we are being disingenuous to people who look at this, who want to run, who don't have the sacrifice, who don't have the ability to get the approval from their job, who are working, who can't make it off of $18,000. Maybe it's who can make off 20. Well, a lot of people do, but I'm telling you that the amount of work that we put in here, $18,000 is not a whole lot of money. I just want to be more inclusive. I think it will open up the discussion and the interest of more people and have this reflective more of the age of this community. I don't think the average age of this city is over 70 years old.
Yes.
And the majority of the people on this board are over 70, and several of these people are retired. So, I mean, I'm strongly for this. So that's how I am. I'm sorry. But, and I don't want to do any kind of in the round. I want everybody to know where where Director Miller is on this. I'm not trying to end around anything. And, you know, I'm not supportive of having the community vote whether I should get a raise or not. They vote whether I should be on this board or not. That's where they vote for me. They voted for me to set policy and make tough decisions. And some decisions people like, some decisions people don't like. But not motivated by any money.
Yes, sir. Director Richardson, then Director Lewis.
Thank you, Mayor. This whole conversation is somewhat fascinating to me because Director Miller, I think you made a great point. I think, Mayor Scott, I think it was your second meeting, and I said prior to your election, the median age of this board, the average age of this board was 68.2. At the same time, the average age of Little Rock citizens was 34.5, almost twice the age of our citizenry. And I don't quite remember here's where I'm the choir member that's out of tune again. I don't quite remember the resistance when Director Kazort was working with Mayor Stoller to get us from 12 to 18. I don't remember that resistance. I don't remember special elections. I don't remember putting it on the ballot. I don't remember that. And I don't know, again, if it's a case of the message versus the messenger. I do remember when late great Director Hendricks tried to put the at-large issue on the general election. There was a halt to that, an organized halt to that. And I'm amazed and amused how we move about addressing issues when presented in certain fashions, in certain forms. With respect to the increase, I don't remember us having that when we went from 12 to 18. I don't remember us talking about that at all. I got all the tapes, and I go back and look. I don't remember this opposition, this request for special elections, but you made a great point that prior to your mayor, I think I said it's your second election, your second meeting you chaired, I said prior to this election with you, the median age of this board was 68.2. At the same time, the median age of this city was 34.5. And I agree with Director Miller in terms of maybe it may be an incentive for others to run, younger people to run. It may be an incentive to increase the quality of candidates or quality of people who can sit up here and make the policies that we make. But I find it fascinating that I did not hear this same level of opposition when we went from 12 to 18, and nobody's running for the money. You can't get rich out for $18,000 or $25,000. And most, if not all of us up here because we want to do public service for our community. We're not up here because we're getting a wonderful 501k or a 529 account. We're up here because we want to do public service to and for our community. And to Director Miller's point, there are countless numbers of meetings that we're required to go to. It's fascinating to me, Mayor, to hear the tone of this conversation right now.
Director Lewis, then Director Webb.
I wasn't finished.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Director.
That's okay. I wasn't finished. I'd say this, it's fascinating to me. I used to debate our late great colleague many a nights on things she would bring up, Director Hendricks. And she was the only person outside of my mom who could call me son. He said, son, you live long enough and you'll see what I'm talking about. And I'll praise to God, if I do live to be that age, I'll never speak the way she spoke because she was on point, sometimes too on point. What I find really fascinating is the tone and the level of input from people around this table that I didn't hear when we went from 12 to 18. When Brad was working on that with Mayor Stoller, I didn't hear that at all. And I think that speaks to sometimes the hypocrisy of our democracy is the illusion of inclusion, Mayor, and I'll leave it at that.
Director Lewis, Webb, then Director Hines.
I know it's been mentioned several times talking about the amount of meetings, but I just have to chime in and say it's not always about the meetings. It's really about how accessible you are to your neighbors and constituents. And I just think about that's when the work is done. I say it all the time. Tuesdays, that's not the work. Yes, that's what the public sees because we get here every week. But the work is done 7 days a week. Sometimes it can be 24 hours a day, but it's based on how accessible you are to your constituents. And honestly, the real question is, how inclusive do we want this board to be? How representative of change do we want this board to be? Or are we happy with the way this board looks? That's the real question. And it doesn't have to be answered out loud, but that's the question.
Director Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When Director Phillips brought this up originally, I did not support it, and I thought it was too much at one time. But I disagree with a lot of what my colleagues have said about we know what we signed up for, things like that. We do know what we signed up for, but I think that there are a lot of people who don't sign up because of they can't afford it. And in contrast to what my friend Director Miller said, I think some of those folks who may be older don't sign up either because some people who are older can't afford it and some people who aren't, but I don't think that's the point. I think the point is that it is public service. You don't do it to make a ton of money, but I think we do need to be more inclusive. And as I told you, Mayor, that I would not support what Director Phillips wanted, but I would support a compromise. And I think going forward, that it's something that should be revisited more regularly so there's not this shock to a lot of people of what appears to be a very large increase. And so I will support it next week after not supporting Director Phillips' original proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Webb. Director Hines.
Again, I don't know how this has digressed into having a difference of opinion about how we give ourselves a pay raise, but I reject that this has to do with skin color, wealth, any of that. Had it been a year earlier in my career, I didn't have the time. Had it been a year later, I would have been too busy. I just happened to have the timing to be able to do it and work it in. And I have employers that allow me to do it. Anybody that's working for a living, and this to me is rooted in our Constitution and our founding of our country, that legislators were meant to be part-time so they could go home and be with their constituents on the federal level. I think that the municipal government is the closest to what our founding fathers had in mind. I've served on several boards and commissions where the pay is zero. I don't do it because of that. I don't think any of us do. We have a sense of community and a sense to do it. And I don't know how this has devolved into something in the fact that to say that this board is not representative. Most of you got on this board when you were in your 30s and 40s, and the power of incumbency is a huge thing in politics in general, but especially in municipal government. I agree. It's how available you make yourselves. People are shocked when I answer the phone, when I return phone calls. It's what I signed up to do. It's how I operate. It has no difference on how anybody else in this board wants to operate. That's just me, how I do business. How I do business in my business life, my personal life, and my political life. You know, I reject the fact that there's any racial undertones or anything about this other than a principle. And Director Richardson, I'll be very principled. I had the same argument last time. I think I was probably the only one who voted against it. My deal was I don't have a problem getting a pay raise. It's just the fact that I didn't get elected to get in here and give myself a pay raise. It's a principle thing for me. And we can agree to disagree on this, and I may be in the minority position on this, and it may pass in the budget. It's not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying we have an opportunity now where we don't even have a special election that, it's much like with the sales tax. I just think it sets bad precedent for us to go out and give ourselves a pay raise when we're planning on trying to go out and ask for a sales tax next year. Anyway, that just is it. And to say that it's anything other than that is offensive to me. And I'm tired of that card being played anytime somebody doesn't get their way when there's a difference of opinion. It's not the case. It's my principle, my belief. I can look at the guy in the mirror and I know who I am.
Director Campiris, then Director Richardson, well, your hand stood up too?
Yes, it's still up.
Director Campiris.
Is there a way of having two votes on this?
Yes.
Thank you.
Director Richardson.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I don't remember anybody bringing up the issue of race, but Director Hines, you and I, we agree on a lot of things and we disagree on a lot of things, and I have not, by my comments, implicated this was racial. I haven't said race, not one time. I hadn't heard anybody, I've heard people say age several times. I have not heard race one time, and since you mentioned me, I felt compelled to respond to that, and we are going to agree, and we can agree to disagree on a number of different things. And you may have been that one person who voted. We had to pull up the records who voted against it when Brad and Mark brought it to us. You may have been, I don't know, but I don't remember this level of discussion, this level of conversation. I don't know if you even accepted it. You may not even accepted it. You may have been adamant against it that you didn't accept it. And you may have been the only one. But what I did say was I did not remember this level and depth of conversation about this issue when it was brought to us before by a former colleague and a former mayor. I haven't heard race. Has anyone else ever heard race? Has anyone else ever heard race? I heard age, wealth. I don't equate those with race or gender. I haven't heard that, Mayor, and I agree with Director Webb, and then what Tom said, we can have 2 votes on it. We have 2 votes on it, and we'll move forward. I don't think we need to beat this dead horse, but I haven't heard race, Lance, not one time. And since you decided to include my name, I felt compelled to respond to that because it felt like it was directed towards me and my comments about message versus messenger.
Director Peck?
Well, I think we've just beat this horse to death, but I feel compelled to say one thing, and then let's please move on. Ageism is very real. So I'm slightly offended when we keep calling, or some people keep calling out the fact, no offense to Virgil, how old we all are. Do we want more young people? Yeah. But I challenge anybody to find somebody who is almost 71 who works as hard as I do at 2 jobs. So ageism is a form of discrimination, and it's very real. So there, I had to say that.
Thank you, Director Peck.
You're welcome.
All right. Members of the board, as we shared that Tom will be working on a separate ordinance, or companion ordinance to the budget ordinance for 2 votes. Any additional questions on the budget? Any additional questions on the budget? Director Webb, Vice Mayor Webb?
Can I ask a question about something else?
Sure, but any additional questions on the budget? We want to make sure that we don't get derailed. Director Hines.
This is not on the budget. I want to go after Director Webb. I have another question on a different.
All right. Director Webb, well, Director Pierce?
Go ahead, Kathy.
Is it on the budget?
No, this is outside.
Director Webb?
Thank you. I wanted to ask the acting city manager a question. In previous years, we've gotten some information about the fund for city employees, and I wondered if we still have that fund and if that's something that you could send to us or ask Ashley to send to us, so if we want to participate in that, we can.
Yes, I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Hines?
This question, I don't know if Director Honeywell is still here, but you have to get me the answer to it. So, and as we talk about age, I may be getting older and my memory's not as good, but did we not, through the bond reissue, have a 2023 resurfacing program that for the life of me seems like we've never done it this year, or am I just missing it and we didn't pave any streets in Ward 5? I guess that's my question. And I know what I'm probably going to hear is that because of the tornado, that has upset the apple cart in terms of timing. And are we planning on doing the 2023 resurfacing and 2024 all next year, I guess is the question. Because I'm getting, as we head into the winter season, I'm getting lots of questions and the roads aren't looking any better.
Sure. Yes, there is what is being called the 2023 resurfacing program. If y'all remember.
Director Honeywell, if you'll speak more clear, I can hear you, but I want to make sure everyone can.
Can everyone hear me okay? So if you'll remember, we did not actually select our projects through our process with both public meetings and board approval until pretty close to the beginning of the summer this year of 2023. At that point, we had to go through the process of writing bid documents, putting it out for bid, going through that whole process. So we have a contractor that has a list of projects that are resurfacing for, it's called 2023 resurfacing program. That contract is written in a way that it's for a year time frame where the contractor has to complete that list of resurfacing projects within that year time frame. So that time frame is now going to be into the middle of 2024. We are right now working on the next year's 2024 program to have that, out for bid. at the beginning of this coming year. So we're trying to get a little more on an annual schedule, but they do run over a calendar year for a program. So you may not see any resurfacing done this year because the contractor has that flexibility to get better pricing for us to be able to do more resurfacing with the funding that we're provided, to have flexibility in their schedule of when they do that list of streets that we've identified.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Pierce. Director Hines, your hand still up?
No.
Director Pierce.
At Christmas time, it has been our tradition, if anybody wants to contribute to the employee emergency fund, this is the time to do it in honor of them at Christmas time. Just a reminder.
All right, members of the board, we hope for a favorable vote on the budget. We also know that there'll be a second vote, as we discussed. Just wanted to share, and also Director Hines, the finance team and I will work to figure out a solution to the enterprise fund, and we'll keep you updated on that.
Thank you.
And we will not forget that, because I know you'll ask about it next year. So we'll make sure I lifted that up. That being said, meeting adjourned.